They thought the human commander was cornered. They thought their armada, 10,000 ships strong, had finally broken Earth. But when the woman general finally revealed her secret strategy, the galaxy learned why you never push humanity to the brink. If you love stories where humans rise from the impossible, hit subscribe and share your thoughts below. They said the final defense line would hold. They said Earth's shield network, woven across half the solar system, was impenetrable. They said the alien armada, an iron black storm of 10,000 warships, would break against humanity's, like waves against a cliff. They were wrong. What remained of the solar defense grid didn't look like a shield anymore. It looked like a graveyard. Burnt satellite husks drifted like broken bones. Lightless defense stations spun silently into the void. The Ares Gate, once humanity's proud warning tower, cracked apart along its equator and split into two drifting monoliths. Every 20 seconds, another human outpost vanished in a stabbing bloom of silent white light. Across Earth's skies, evacuation shuttles crawled upward in long lines that resembled desperate prayers aimed toward the black heavens. Humanity watched its own doom descend, ship by ship, like stars dying. Even the bravest watchers could not hide the tremor in their breath when the Armada's colossal shadow passed over the moon, dimming its reflection like a curtain closing on an era. Panic was not a word anymore. It was a pulse vibrating through every hallway, bunker, transport bay, and command deck. Soldiers whispered last messages into visors. Families clutched each other inside trembling bunkers. Engineers slammed tools onto metal floors, swearing at failures they no longer had time to fix. Screens across the world glowed with casualty counts, climbing too fast for human eyes to process. Hope was collapsing as fast as the defense line itself. And yet, in the middle of the chaos, while admirals argued, captains shouted orders, and tactical screens bled red warnings, one person stood completely, impossibly calm. General Arya Kalin. She had always been a strange figure in the Terran command hierarchy. Quiet when others barked, observing when others rushed. A strategist who rarely explained how she knew what she knew, only that she was almost never wrong. A rumor said she turned down a seat on the High Command Council because she preferred silence over ceremony. Another said she had once spent 6 straight years studying alien combat logs without speaking to anyone except her AI. Most called her brilliant. A few called her unnerving. Today, all eyes turned to her. Her boots echoed once across the command chamber's fractured floor, the only steady sound in a room drowning in alarms. Screens flickered. Officers flinched at the explosions rolling through the far reaches of the system. But Arya simply folded her hands behind her back, her eyes cold and sharp, focused not on what humanity had lost, but on what had not yet been taken. Admiral Juno slammed her fist on a console. General, the second perimeter is gone. They're burning everything from Titan to the belt. We don't have the ships to repel a force of this size. They will hit Earth in 3 hours, another officer cried. We can't evacuate billions in that time. They're not coming to occupy. A third whispered. They want us erased. Arya didn't speak. She didn't argue. She didn't even look distressed. Instead, she stared at the slowly approaching mass of enemy signatures, filling the holomap like a crawling night. The enemy armada, the XYRR Dominion's supreme fleet, the most feared war machine in the known galaxy. And humanity was standing alone. A soldier stumbled into the chamber, face pale, voice shaking. General, the Dominion just broadcast another message. They want your response specifically. Arya blinked once. Put it through. A hologram flickered. The Dominion warlord's towering silhouette appeared, tendrils coiling like living blades. His mouth curled with disdain as he observed the wounded state of Earth's remaining leaders. Humans, he rasped. You fought longer than predicted. Irrelevant. Your extinction is inevitable. Surrender your world. Surrender your species. We may yet allow remnants to survive as labor stock. Officers recoiled at the insult. Some shouted curses. Some trembled in barely contained rage. Arya alone remained steady, her expression unreadable. She stepped forward. You want a response? She asked quietly. The room fell silent. Arya lifted her chin. No, the alien warlord hissed. Then perish. The transmission cut. No one breathed. An officer turned to her, eyes wet and afraid. General, they'll destroy us. There's nothing left between them and Earth. What are we supposed to do? Arya finally looked at her own command staff. Humans she had fought alongside for decades. Soldiers who had followed her through victories no one believed possible. She looked at their fear, their exhaustion, their hope flickering like a candle drowning under wind. And she whispered something no one expected. Prepare the silent sector. The room froze. Someone whispered, "Ma'am, we don't use that region. It's unstable, untouched. Nothing out there is mapped." Arya's voice sharpened. "I need every ship we have left moved there. Immediately. Civilian transports included." The Admiral stared at her in disbelief. "You can't be serious. You want to gather civilians near gravitational wreckage? We'll lose more ships there than to the Dominion." "We lose more if we stay here," Arya answered softly. Her eyes, normally calm, now carried fire. "The alien fleet expects us to fight on familiar ground. They expect broken defenses and panicked retreats. They expect us to cling to predictable positions and predictable patterns. They expect us to be like every species they've crushed before." She stepped closer to the holomap, tracing a faint boundary line of space that glowed with warning indicators. "They do not expect humans to do the impossible." The words hit differently. They didn't sound like bravado. They sounded like certainty. Officers exchanged confused glances. No one understood what exactly Arya was planning, but every instinct inside them screamed that something about the silent sector was tied to a card she had never shown anyone. Something dangerous. Something bold. Something entirely human. As orders relayed across channels, and ships reeled toward a new rendezvous point, civilians huddled in shuttles whispered prayers, unaware that their fate was now tied to a part of the galaxy no sane strategist would ever use. Arya Kalen moved alone to a dim auxiliary chamber, closing the door behind her. She stood before a sealed console, one only she had clearance to access. Her fingers hovered above the activation glyph. Her heartbeat remained perfectly controlled. For 20 years, she had waited for this moment. She unlocked the console. Layer upon layer of encrypted star maps, gravitational models, and alien behavioral algorithms flooded the display. Data she had collected long before the war. Data no one else had ever believed mattered. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "It's time." The silent sector swallowed hundreds of human ships as they arrived. Yet on the Dominion sensors, the area looked empty. Dead. Void of life. The perfect place to bury a defeated species. But Arya was not guiding humanity into a grave. She was guiding them into position. Because while the Dominion believed Earth's final defense had collapsed, Arya knew something they didn't. The real defense had never been the shield line. It was her strategy. A secret massive enough to turn the approaching Armada into dust. And as the alien fleet began its final approach toward Earth, unaware of the trap forming in the dark, Arya Kalen allowed herself the smallest hint of a smile. The human fleet drifted into the silent sector like scattered survivors seeking shelter in the void. Engines hummed under heavy strain, hulls crackled with exhaustion, and every ship carried the same suffocating question. Why had General Arya Kalen brought them here? The region was infamous. A haunted corridor of collapsed star remnants and unpredictable gravitational distortions. Navigators trembled, just plotting courses through it. Entire research teams had vanished decades earlier trying to chart it. No one used this place. No one dared. Except her. High Command didn't wait long before demanding answers. Their voices snapped over the comm channels, with barely concealed panic. "General Kalen, we need clarity. You diverted our remaining forces into the most dangerous, unmapped zone in the sector. With respect, this is not a strategy, it's suicide." Arya didn't flinch. "It's only suicide if we behave like prey," she replied, her tone steady. "We will not win a conventional battle. We have neither the firepower nor the numbers to meet the Dominion head-on. But that also means they cannot predict what comes next." Admiral Juno pressed harder. "You still haven't explained why this region. Why here, of all places? If there's something you know, something we don't, you need to share it. Millions of lives depend on your next words." Arya stepped closer to the central display, its holographic light cutting across her face as she expanded the star map. The silent sector unfolded like a jagged wound in space. Gravity scars, broken energy jets, and collapsed star cores, all drifting dangerously close together, forming a labyrinth of cosmic hazards. "This region isn't chaos," she said quietly. "It only looks like chaos. Beneath it is a pattern the Dominion never learned to read. But humans did. Or more accurately, I did." The room stilled. She continued, 20 years ago, I was deployed on a deep space reconnaissance assignment. The Dominion had just conquered their 12th world. Everyone expected they would turn on humanity next. So I decided to study them. Not their ships, not their weapons, but their decisions. Their psychology. I wanted to understand not their strength, but their fear. A captain frowned. "Fear? The Dominion doesn't fear anything." Arya shook her head once. "Every species fears something. Every empire has a blind spot, and the Dominion's is unpredictability. They operate on rigid, algorithm-driven logic. Their battle formations follow strict patterns. Their navigation relies entirely on stable gravitational lanes. They avoid zones like this not because they cannot survive them, but because they cannot understand them." A murmur rippled through the commanders. "And humans can?" someone asked. Arya turned, her expression sharpening. "Humans evolved on a death world. We thrive in uncertainty. We adapt in chaos. We improvise when everything collapses. This region is lethal for any species that demands certainty. But for us, that's opportunity." Her words settled into the room like cold electricity. Still, doubt lingered in the eyes of several officers. They had seen too much destruction, too many defeats, and too many predictions shattered by the Dominion's overwhelming power. Even if Arya was right about their psychology, how could any strategy, even one built on instability, stand against an armada thousands of ships strong? A colonel finally asked the question no one dared voice. "What exactly are you planning?" Arya hesitated, not out of doubt, but out of calculation. Some parts of her plan had been locked away for so long that speaking them aloud required more than authority. It required absolute trust, and the room did not yet have it. So she revealed only what she must. "We're going to reshape the battlefield," she said. "We cannot outgun them. We cannot outrun them. But we can outthink them. I've spent 2 decades mapping this region's gravitational behavior, understanding the distortions, how they shift, how they stabilize, how they collapse. There are corridors here invisible to Dominion sensors, paths where pressure spikes only if you fly wrong by a fraction of a degree. A human pilot with intuition can navigate them. Dominion ships cannot." A younger officer shook her head. "But navigating them with our entire fleet, even the best pilots can make mistakes." "We're not taking the entire fleet inside," Arya answered. "Only the Ghost Unit." The room stiffened. The Ghost Unit wasn't a legend, it was worse. A rumored team of human pilots, known for taking missions too dangerous for anyone sane. They were the ones who flew into neutron storms to rescue stranded researchers. The ones who operated inside debris fields everyone else avoided. The ones who returned from impossible scenarios with trembling hands and haunted eyes. And they followed Arya Kalin without question. Someone whispered, "You want them to bait the Dominion into this region." Arya did not deny it, but before the officers could argue, the proximity alarms chimed, sharp, insistent, chilling. The Dominion fleet had entered the outer boundary of the silent sector. Their formation was tightening, their approach accelerating. They were moving with confidence, certain that humanity's retreat meant victory. The comm systems lit up again, another message from the Dominion warlord. His voice oozed with mockery. "General Kalin, I see you've chosen to run. An amusing tactic. Ineffective, but amusing. The last of your people will fall soon. Will you beg when Earth burns? Or will you remain silent, like a coward hiding in the dark?" Arya didn't respond. She simply turned away. The warlord growled, "Your refusal to accept reality is admirable for a primitive. We will purge your species quickly." The transmission cut. A tense quiet followed. Dozens of eyes fixed on Arya, waiting for the first crack in her composure. None came. Instead, She finally gave her next order, calm and controlled. Open channel to the Ghost unit. A single voice answered immediately, steady, loyal, carrying a dose of reckless pride. Ghost 1 reporting. Ready for orders, General. Arya exhaled slowly. You know the entry vectors? Studied them for years. You're activating the protocol, aren't you? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Ghost 1 continued. Then we're ready. Say the word. Behind Arya, Admiral Juno stepped forward. General, if this unit fails, if they misjudge the corridor even slightly, we lose our last chance. You're gambling everything. Arya faced her fully. I am not gambling. I am calculating. And the Dominion has no calculation for what humanity is capable of when pushed to extinction. Her gaze returned to the star map, where the enemy fleet pulsed like a growing storm. Her voice steadied, sharpening into command. All forces hold position. Ghost unit, prepare to activate the corridor. Ghost 1 replied with a short, firm breath. Understood. For Earth. The channel closed. The officers watched as the Ghost unit's small squadron peeled away from the main fleet, vanishing into the thickening distortions of the silent sector. They moved with uncanny precision, engines threading through invisible hazards that would have torn any other ship in half. They trusted Arya's data without hesitation. They trusted her plan even though they still didn't understand it. She watched their movement with unblinking focus, her mind already running simulations the rest of the command couldn't fathom. Admiral Juno finally spoke again, quieter this time. Arya, why all the secrecy? Why carry this alone for so long? Arya's eyes softened just slightly. Because people fear what they don't understand. And this strategy requires absolute certainty, not debate. And what do you call this? The Admiral asked. This moment right now. Arya looked at the dark horizon where the Dominion fleet approached, their weapons primed for annihilation. I call this, she said, the beginning of their end. And as her words settled across the trembling human fleet, every officer realized something chilling and powerful. She wasn't stalling. She wasn't retreating. She was positioning humanity to strike. Her secret strategy had not yet been revealed. But when it was, it would break the Dominion in a way they could never have prepared for. The silent sector swallowed the human fleet like a vast, breathless void. While the Dominion closed in, tightening their formation with mathematical precision, General Arya Kalen stood at the center of the command deck, her eyes fixed on the holographic star map. For the first time since the war began, she opened the files she had kept locked away for 20 years, files so heavily encrypted that most officers didn't even know they existed. The holomap flickered as new layers of data unfolded. Gravitational fault lines, collapse zones, turbulence pockets, and dozens of thin, winding corridors drawn in faint blue. The officer stared, stunned. These corridors weren't on any chart. They weren't part of any known stellar survey. They were impossibly narrow pathways threading between lethal gravitational pulses, paths so thin that a ship entering a fraction too far left or right would be torn apart in seconds. Arya had mapped them alone. No AI could have predicted these patterns. No standard navigator could have tracked the shifts. It took something else, instinct, patience, and the kind of human intuition no Dominion algorithm could imitate. She had spent years studying the star remnants' behavior, learning how their collapsed energy spiraled, how their dormant cores occasionally reactivated, how invisible gravitational eddies pulsed every few minutes like a heartbeat. She understood this region the way a storm chaser understands a hurricane. Not from charts, but from obsession. Admiral Juno whispered, almost afraid of the truth forming in her mind. General, this entire region, you studied it alone. Arya didn't look away from the map. Long before the Dominion came to our borders, I knew we would need a battlefield that didn't favor them. Something they would never dare enter. Something they cannot predict. But why didn't you share this? The Admiral pushed. Because no one would have believed it. Arya answered. You would have dismissed it as madness. And then the data would have buried itself beneath a mountain of committee reviews and bureaucratic hesitation. Meanwhile, the Dominion would advance, confident that they know how we fight. And they don't, Juno murmured. No, Arya said softly. They don't understand us at all. The officers around her felt the shift, not in the battlefield, not in the map, but in themselves. For the first time since the defense grid fell, there was clarity. Not relief, but purpose. They were no longer reacting to the Dominion. They were preparing to outmaneuver them. Arya expanded the map further, zooming into the largest distortion field. Amid the swirling chaos of collapsed star debris, one formation pulsed faintly, a dormant dwarf star remnant still radiating unstable gravity. This, she said, pointing to the faint pulse, is the heart of the strategy. A captain frowned. That region is unusable. No ship can survive near a remnant that unstable. Incorrect, Arya replied. Human ships can. Dominion ships cannot. She traced the path the Ghost unit was currently navigating. Their vessels are designed for precise, predictable gravitational patterns. They rely on stability. They rely on logic. They rely on everything this region does not provide. When they enter, their formations will collapse faster than their commanders can recalculate. Another officer asked, voice trembling, "And our ships?" Human vessels were built to endure extremes, Arya said. Our engineers designed them to fight near suns, to dive into magnetic storms, to survive fragments of supernova shockwaves. They're rugged because we've always needed ruggedness. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We built our technology the same way. She paused, letting the truth settle. In this region, Dominion ships will be blind, slow, heavy, vulnerable, but humans will fly like they were born here. Her conviction rippled through the room, like a rising tide. Someone asked, "What exactly do you intend to do, General?" She zoomed in further until the gravitational currents formed a three-dimensional maze of deadly spirals. She drew an arc through one corridor, bringing it close to the dwarf star remnant, then looping it sharply into a pocket of compressed gravity. When the Dominion enters this path, she said, their lead ships will be funneled toward the remnant. Their formation will tighten, trying to compensate, but the gravity will distort their maneuverability. Then the slow-time pocket will catch them. There were sharp intakes of breath. Slow-time pockets weren't theoretical, they were nightmares. Time within those pockets stretched unpredictably. A single second outside could feel like minutes inside. Dominion ships caught in them would be slowed long enough to lose formation, making them easy targets. And once they're slowed, Arya continued, the Ghost unit will strike the anchor points. What anchor points? The gravitational stabilizers left behind by the collapsed stars, she explained. They're fragile. If hit with precision, they destabilize the entire zone, triggering a collapse wave. Cold silence fell. One officer whispered, "You want to collapse the whole region on top of the Dominion?" Arya nodded once. "Exactly." Juno exhaled hard. "That would destroy them, but wouldn't it tear our ships apart too?" "Only if we remain inside," Arya said. "Our fleet won't be anywhere near the collapse. Ghost unit is in and out already. The Dominion will be the only force inside the collapse zone." Another officer swallowed. "So you've been planning to use a cosmic weapon, a natural one, for 20 years. Arya didn't deny it. She enlarged the temporal model. The simulation showed the Dominion fleet entering the narrow corridor, their formation stretching thin, their lead ships hitting the slow-time pocket, losing momentum, and then a wave of gravitational collapse sweeping through them like a tidal wave of invisible force. Ship after ship would be dragged, crushed, folded, or frozen in pockets where physics broke down. It wouldn't be just a defeat. It would be annihilation. "But how do you know it'll work on a fleet this size?" an officer asked, voice rising. Arya locked eyes with him. "Because the Dominion operates on assumptions. I operate on patterns. They believe this region is random, but I've spent 20 years proving it's predictable. And if your predictions are wrong," he challenged, "then humanity dies," Arya said plainly. "But if we do nothing, we also die. I will not choose surrender disguised as safety." Her bluntness silenced every objection. Alarms flared again. Dominion scouts reached the entry point of the silent sector, scanning the region, confused by the lack of human defense signatures. Their tactical broadcasts, intercepted by human sensors, echoed with cold confidence. They believed humanity had fled. They believed this was cleanup. Earth, to them, was already dead. Aria's voice sliced through the tension. Prepare to transmit false coordinates. Feed them a phantom fleet signal deeper inside the sector. Make them think we're hiding. Make them think we're afraid. Juno nodded sharply. Give them exactly what they expect. And nothing they're prepared for. Aria finished. The false signal launched. Dominion sensors snapped onto it like predators, catching scent of prey. Their fleet adjusted formation, accelerating into the sector in perfect alignment with Aria's predicted corridor. Every human officer stared at the map, breath held. Aria watched with icy focus. They're entering the blind angle, she said softly. The gravitational current. Juno asked. No, Aria replied. The angle of overconfidence. It took a moment, but then the Dominion's lead ships drifted straight into the corridor, the trap mouth, exactly where she had spent decades preparing for this moment. Aria whispered the words she'd waited half her life to speak. Begin Phase 1. The strategy was no longer secret. It had begun. The Dominion Armada entered the silent sector with the confidence of a predator stepping into a den of broken prey. Their ships glided in perfect geometric formation, their engines humming in rigid synchronization, their targeting arrays sweeping the darkness for any trace of humanity. From a distance, the fleet looked invincible, a steel tide advancing into a void that should have swallowed them whole. But they didn't understand what they were walking into. They had no idea that the void itself was the trap. General Aria Kalin stood at the command deck with her hands clasped behind her back, her face illuminated by the shifting gravitational patterns dancing across the holomap. The Dominion fleet had followed the false coordinates perfectly, narrowing their formation just as she predicted. Any other strategist would have seen the sector as chaos. She saw it as a machine, one she had spent 2 decades learning to operate. Admiral Juno stared at the data streams. They're scattering short-range scouts, she said. Their sensors are struggling. They're detecting phantom signatures everywhere. Aria nodded. Good. It means the distortions are already affecting their systems. Their AI cannot distinguish real threats from gravitational noise. And their commanders? They're staying in formation despite the interference. Yes, Aria said, because they believe discipline is strength. They always have, and that belief will kill them. The Dominion ships pushed deeper into the labyrinth. Sharp fluctuations tugged at their hulls, tiny gravitational whiplashes that human ships were built to flex against. But Dominion ships were engineered to resist. Resistance meant rigidity. Rigidity meant breakage. One officer whispered, General, if they detect the ghost unit before the strike, they won't. Aria replied without hesitation. Not until it's too late. In the distance, hidden among the distortion waves, the ghost unit drifted silently, their engines down to almost nothing, their ships camouflaged by the gravitational haze. They watched the Dominion's massive silhouette glide past them like a blind titan unaware of the knife poised at its throat. Inside the Dominion command vessel, the warlord broadcast another message, his voice carrying cold arrogance across the void. General Kalin, we have entered your hiding place. This sector will serve as your grave. I commend your attempt to flee. It will make your extinction more poetic. Aria didn't bother responding. She muted the transmission with a single gesture. They talk too much, she murmured. The officers looked at her, some startled, some amused despite the tension. It was the first sign of dry humor she had shown since the war began. The fleet map shifted again. The Dominion had reached the point Aria called the narrowing throat, an invisible funnel created by the interaction of 2 collapsing star remnants. The corridor squeezed their formation tighter, ship by ship, forcing them into a rigid column. They think this is to their advantage, Aria said. A narrow passage means fewer angles of attack. They assume they're channeling us. But really, she tapped a control, highlighting 3 faint gravitational spikes. The corridor compresses them against unstable gravity. Their ships will fight it, exactly as I need them to. Juno exhaled sharply. Phase 1 is holding perfectly. Aria's voice dropped to a calm, lethal whisper. Phase 1 isn't holding. Phase 1 is bait. The Dominion ships accelerated, unaware that the deeper they traveled, the more the gravitational currents shifted behind them, slowly sealing off the exit route. The corridor would look open to their sensors, but in truth, it had become a one-way path. By the time they realized it, the collapse wave would already be forming. A communications officer called out, "General, the Dominion Secondary Fleet is requesting instructions from their flagship. They're uncertain about the gravitational interference." Arya smiled faintly. Uncertainty. That's new for them. But their doctrine won't allow deviation. They'll follow the flagship, no matter what. They really don't adapt, an officer muttered. Exactly, Arya said. That is the entire point. She turned to the central console. Ghost Unit report. Ghost 1 responded instantly, his voice steady. We're in position. Gravitational pulses stable on our end. The anchor points are exposed, just like you projected. Estimated strike time? 2 minutes once you give the order. Arya narrowed her eyes at the holomap. Not yet. Wait for the next flux wave. Copy that. Juno tilted her head. Why wait? Because, Arya said, expanding the map. During the next gravitational flux, the Dominion will run formation corrections. Their ships will slow by 12% while their computers recalibrate. They rely on those cycles for stability. And slowing them makes the collapse hit harder? No, Arya said. Slowing them makes it inescapable. As if on cue, the flux wave triggered an enormous, silent ripple passing through the region, bending light and warping time. Dominion ships staggered slightly, drifting out of alignment before correcting themselves. Their AI systems engaged full thruster compensation. Arya lifted her chin. Ghost Unit now. Ghost 1 did not hesitate, executing strike sequence. The Ghost ships ignited their engines for a split second, just enough thrust to dart into the narrowest bends of the corridor, where the gravitational stabilizers glowed faintly, unseen by Dominion sensors. They moved like shadows, like whispering blades, cutting through the dark. Ghost 2's voice came through. Anchor point Alpha charged. Ghost 3, Bravo set. Ghost 4, Charlie locked. Ghost 1, targets aligned, awaiting detonation signal. Arya placed her hand on the console. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the controlled power of a storm held behind glass. Detonate. A pulse of light flashed through the darkness. 3 points at first, then 9, then 24 as the anchors destabilized. The effect wasn't explosive. It was far worse. The fabric of space buckled. A gravitational shockwave erupted, silent and invisible, but impossibly destructive. It rippled outward, hitting the Dominion fleet like a cosmic hammer. Their ships lurched violently, their formation breaking at once. Navigation computers screamed warnings. Structural integrity fields overloaded. Their rigid discipline shattered in a blink. The warlord's furious voice cut across the Dominion channels. Reform the line. Recalibrate. Divert power. But his commands were useless. The collapse zone activated. A swirling vortex of gravitational distortion opened behind the Dominion fleet, sealing their way out. The corridor became a trap wall that began folding inward, dragging the ships closer to the dwarf star remnant. Human officers watched in stunned silence as the invincible Dominion fleet was suddenly, unmistakably, catastrophically vulnerable. Juno whispered, Arya, you did it. They can't escape. Arya didn't smile. Her voice remained steady. This is only the beginning. The collapse wave intensified, dragging Dominion ships backward. Their vessels twisted unnaturally, their engines struggling against a tide stronger than physics itself. Their geometric formation shattered into chaos. Some ships collided. Others spun helplessly. Others vanished into pockets, where time stretched into nothing. The warlord broadcast one last message, this time not arrogant, but enraged. What have you done, human? This region is forbidden. It is death. Arya finally responded. That's why I chose it. She cut the channel. The officers watched as the Dominion's mighty fleet writhed in the crushing grip of a dying star's gravity, powerless against forces they never prepared for. Ghost One's voice came through. General, the enemy is breaking apart. We've never seen them like this. Arya spoke quietly, with grim purpose. Prepare for Phase 2. Phase 2? Juno asked. Arya's eyes hardened. We're not finished yet. The shockwave from the exploding dreadnought had barely faded when the last surviving fragments of the alien armada attempted to scatter. Their remaining cruisers lurched into desperate evasive patterns, engines overloading as they tried to outrun the inevitable. They had witnessed something they could not understand, something no simulations, no war room projections, no historical analysis had ever prepared them for. Humanity had not only shattered their fleet, it had predicted every move they would make and countered it with devastating precision. And now, with fear crawling through every surviving officer's spine, they understood why the elders of their galaxy whispered one rule: do not provoke a species that refuses to die. General Avellini Reyes watched their attempted escape with a calmness bordering on eerie. Her uniform was scorched from shockwaves, her cheek carried a thin cut from an earlier blast, but her eyes remained steady. On the command deck around her, younger officers whispered that she looked almost disappointed that the battle was ending so quickly. But she wasn't disappointed. She was calculating. Every breath she took was another silent assessment of risk, response, and opportunity. The hidden strategy she had unleashed, Silence Pattern Delta, had done its job, but she knew better than to assume the fight was over. Armadas could be crushed. Empires could be crippled. But fear made enemies unpredictable. She stepped forward, voice steady. Target the dispersing groups. Disable engines, not life support. We take prisoners. Her officers hesitated. The instinct was to eliminate the threat completely. No witnesses meant no retaliation. But Avellini had something else in mind. The aliens needed survivors. They needed to carry the message home. Admiral Knox, patched through via holo, leaned forward. Prisoners? Reyes, after what they deployed against Earth. She cut him off gently but firmly. Exactly. They need to understand how close they came to losing everything. And they won't learn from ruins. They'll learn from living memory. Let them witness what humanity can do when pushed to the brink. Knox stared at her with a strange mix of admiration and disbelief. You're playing a longer game than any war council ever dared. She didn't deny it, because it was true. The human fleet shifted formation with crisp synchrony, executing Avellini's commands with almost surgical precision. Electromagnetic nets unfolded like vast metallic webs, ensnaring alien cruisers and pulling them into disabling zones. Ion pulses stripped their propulsion. EMP surges took out weapons. One by one, ships that once believed themselves superior fell silent. Not dead, not destroyed, just powerless. And in that helplessness, they finally understood humanity's terrifying restraint. On the flagship vigil's promise, the comms officer shouted, "General, incoming message from the alien war master. Priority signal. He wants to speak." Avellini's jaw tightened, not from fear, but from anticipation. Put him through. The hologram that materialized flickered with distortion, but the war master's imposing form was unmistakable. His armor was cracked, smoke drifting from the seams. His crest, symbol of dominance, was shattered. Yet his eyes still burned with pride and fury. "Human," he growled, voice trembling not from weakness but humiliation. "You should have annihilated us when you had the chance. Your mercy is an error you will regret." Avellini didn't blink. "And you should have chosen diplomacy instead of an invasion. Yet here we are." The War Master's mandibles clicked in agitation. "What trick did you use? What forbidden technology? No species can outmaneuver an empire that has ruled for millennia." "Not a trick," Avellini replied. "A strategy built on one simple truth. You underestimated us." She stepped closer to the projection, her voice lowering into something cold and final. "You came believing humans were fragile, predictable, weak. But you forget what desperation creates. You forget what hope inspires. You forget what happens when a species born in chaos decides to stand together." Her next word struck like a blade. "You didn't face a fleet today. You faced an entire planet's determination." For the first time, the War Master faltered. His voice lost its edge. "Why take prisoners? Why spare remnants of my armada?" Avellini held his gaze. Because dead soldiers can't deliver warnings. Living witnesses can. Silence stretched between them. A silence thick, she continued, tone steady. I want your empire to know exactly what you faced. I want them to hear from your own mouth that humanity met your full strength and broke it. The War Master's fists clenched, claws screeching against his armor. You think fear will keep us from returning? No, she answered. Understanding will. His expression twisted with confusion. Avellini explained. Your empire rules by intimidation, by force, by stamping out anyone who resists. But humans don't submit. Push us, and we push back harder. Corner us, and we tear through the walls. Try to break us, and we forge ourselves stronger. You aren't dealing with a subject world. You're dealing with equal territory. And now, you'll report that truth. The War Master stared at her, and slowly, very slowly, his head dipped. Not a bow, not surrender, but something older. A warrior's acknowledgement of another warrior. You have changed the course of this war, human general, whether your kind realizes it yet or not. The projection faded. The comms deck was silent. Then Avellini turned to her officers, her voice steadier than steel. Prep the fleet. We escort the prisoners back to their border. Once they cross, we hold position. Earth will not be caught off guard again. Her command crew nodded, energized instead of exhausted. Humanity's spirit was contagious, and Avellini embodied it more fiercely than anyone alive. She wasn't just a strategist. She wasn't just the architect of the empire-shattering plan. She was the proof that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology. It was the refusal to fall when every force in the galaxy demanded it. As the alien prisoners' convoy began moving, a young lieutenant approached her hesitantly. General, what happens now? We defeated their armada. But whatever empire stands behind them, won't they retaliate? Avellini looked forward, to the stars, where new dangers undoubtedly waited. They'll think twice, she said quietly. And if they return, they'll find humanity united, prepared, stronger than before. She clasped her hands behind her back. And they'll learn that what happened today wasn't luck. It wasn't a singular tactic. It wasn't a hidden advantage. It was humanity doing what humanity does best, adapting, enduring, and striking back harder than anyone expects. The lieutenant exhaled, awe settling over him. You really believe they won't risk another invasion? Avellini smirked faintly. Oh, they'll risk it. Empires always do. But when they come, they won't face what they saw today. He frowned. Then what will they face? Her answer was soft, but it carried throughout the bridge. A species that refuses to be conquered. The human fleet stretched across the void like a wall of dawn rising after the darkest night. Earth's signal beacons pulsed in the distance, welcoming the victorious ships home. Across the planet, billions would soon learn the truth. Humanity hadn't just survived an empire's wrath. They had shattered its pride, dismantled its strongest fleet, and forced its greatest war master to acknowledge defeat. And somewhere deep in alien territory, news of the defeat would spread like wildfire. Whispers would rise, warnings would echo, and elders would repeat a new rule. Do not provoke the species that broke an empire in a single day, because behind every human soldier was a story. Behind every story was a fire, and behind that fire stood leaders like Avellini Reyes, women whose strategies didn't just win battles, but rewrote destinies. Humanity's chapter in the Galactic saga had changed forever, and this time, the galaxy would read it with fear.